And isn't it true that some of these schools, it costs them more to comply with the race to the top than how much they're actually getting as far as funding is concerned?
So the core elements of race to the top are in state law or regulation. So districts would have to comply with, for example, implementation of the new English language arts and mathematics standards and the associated professional development, whether or not they were participating in race to the top. Districts would have to submit the data that will help us connect higher education and K through 12, whether they're participating in race to the top or not. And districts would need to implement the new teacher and principal evaluation system, whether or not they're receiving race to the top funds or not. So the race to the top funds are really additive rather than an exchange of a certain amount of resources for a set of activities. So it is true that many districts get relatively small allocations from race to the top because $700 million spread across New York State based on the Title I Part A formula focused on high-need students results often in relatively small allocations to districts. But the activities required for race to the top are, again, in state law or in state regulation and apply to all districts.
Okay. Now, one other thing, you're switching certificates of completion for special ed students, so they'll no longer, it won't be a high school diploma, it'll be called something else. Won't that put our kids to some of these kids, give them a disadvantage when they're trying to get into the job market?
We're actually trying, it's a very helpful question actually, because I do think this is something that we need to be clearer on. We're actually trying to make the certificate more meaningful. The current IEP diploma is actually quite confusing to students and parents because they think it is a high school diploma. But in fact, the IEP diploma can't be used to join the military, can't be used for admission to higher education. We are trying to replace it with a career skills credential that would actually describe what career skills, what workplace readiness a student has achieved. And one of the things we're particularly concerned about, and there was a recent article here in the Albany paper about this, is a confusion for parents who get steered into the IEP diploma thinking that it will actually allow their child to have access to opportunity after high school when it won't. So we actually think eliminating the phrase, the word diploma from the phrase IEP diploma will help make it clearer to families. The career skills credential will be an opportunity for the parent and the school to talk in real terms about what the opportunities will be for the student after they graduate.
Wouldn't it be better just to go to a general diploma again? Well, like we used to have. We used to have a general and a regents, okay? And I'm looking at these numbers here with the dropout rate, and I can only think that some of this is because we have children that may not have the ability to get the regents diploma, okay? But they could qualify for a general diploma. And what we're doing is, by not giving them that avenue, okay? I'm looking your flat rating here with the 73.4%, going back all the way to 2003. And my question on your chart here is, okay, I have New York City, I have large city, I have urban, suburban, rural. I understand. What's this average and low?
That's based on needs. So those are average needs and low needs.
So that actually bumped up our average. But when we're looking at it, when we look at New York City, we look at large city, urban, suburban, I'm thinking that's Long Island, right? Or rural is upstate, correct? And when we average those numbers together for 2003, we have a graduation rate of about 62%.
So one of the things that's interesting is that over the last decade, as the regions have increased the graduation requirements, every year the graduation rate has gone up. So I think that the challenge is we know how limited the opportunities are, and I share your concern for those students who don't graduate from high school. And we do have a safety net for students with disabilities so that they can graduate with a Regents diploma with a different set of scores than general education students. One of the things the Regents are looking at is that population of students with disabilities in between the students who would have gotten the IEP diploma, now the career skills credential, and students who can meet the safety net bar, and what we can do for those students to make sure we have good pathways to graduation for them. So we share the concern. But I think the reality for us is that the demand, the post-secondary demands have changed. And for students who don't have the level of skills necessary to pass the Regents exams, the opportunities are quite limited. And we see with careers that even if you look at those careers that are fastest growing around the state, those careers that are the most common employers that put you on a sustainable, that provide a sustainable wage and health insurance, those careers require very similar skills to what would be required for a student to enter and pass a credit-bearing first-year community college course. And so the gap between college and career readiness has shrunk, and our need to ensure that more students are meeting that bar, I think that urgency of that need has increased. But we very much share your concern about figuring out how do we make sure that we identify pathways to graduation for every student.
Yeah, I just can't help this think that with all of it, well, we've tried to change education over the years. Okay, we've tried to institute teacher evaluations. We tried, years ago, there were two different ways. There was an education path and there was a career path. BOCES was you had auto mechanics, you had carpentry, you had all LPNs. They were graduating high school with an LPN and going to work. You had cosmetology, and some students chose either the career track or they chose the education track, all right? And I just think once government got involved in this and we tried to change everything, we screwed everything up, okay? We should look at the models we used to do back in the 70s, right? And say, are we going in the wrong direction? And when I look at these graduation rates, we're talking close to 40% of our kids aren't graduating high school, okay? They're basically virtually unemployable, all right? How is this helping our economy?
Again, the key thing is that that's a smaller number than 5 years ago or 10 years ago. So in terms of graduation rates, the state has been headed in the right direction for some time. I think the issue you're raising about career readiness is a critical one. I will say there are more career and technical education programs today than there were 5 years ago. The BOCES are doing, I agree with you, by and large, an excellent job of providing career and technical pathways for students. We find that students who are enrolled in high-quality career and technical education programs graduate with Regents diplomas at higher levels than students of similar academic performance who aren't enrolled in career and technical education programs. So you're exactly right, those career and tech programs they engage students, they help them find meaning in what they're doing in high school and their pathway to jobs. But at the same time, the jobs that we're preparing students for are changing, and I do think we've got to, as a state, sort of change with the economy. I was in a welding class recently where the welding teacher was talking about the importance of students' math skills to their success as welders. And he was talking about the role of fractions and the good student understanding of fractions in their success as welders. And that he actually had organized his welding classroom in a way that he was focused on helping build students' math skills so that the most complicated projects were given to the students who had the best command of fractions. Part of what that signaled to me is that even as we try to focus on career opportunities, we've got to make sure that students have strong academic skills. That's what the Common Core standards, the new standards the Regents have adopted, are intended to achieve. But I very much share your concern about making sure we continue to prepare students for college and careers.
Thank you very much, Commissioner.